Hello, my name is Jenna Goddard, and I'm the Writing Center Coordinator at Thompson Rivers University, where I also teach student success courses. Today, I'm going to introduce you to the APA citation style and talk about some of the differences between the 6th edition and the 7th. And I realize that I'm probably going to find this more exciting than you do. I'd first like to acknowledge that Thompson Rivers University is situated on the traditional lands of the Tk'emlúps te Secwépemc within Secwepemcúlecw. First, I'll start off by talking about what APA is. For some of you, this might be a term you've heard before, but for others, it might be completely new. I'll chat about some common student misconceptions when it comes to APA, and then I'll share some of the most important differences for students between APA 6th edition and 7th edition. Then I'll break it down into 3 sections. I'll talk about the format and structure, then I'll talk about in-text citations, and then the references page. Most importantly, I'll share some great resources from the TRU Library and Writing Center that will help you with citation. So what exactly is APA? Well, it stands for American Psychological Association. It's the kind of citation style that's commonly used in classes like education, or maybe your business class, nursing. So chances are good that you'll probably encounter it at some point in your university career. Basically, they're guidelines for how you format your paper and how you integrate other people's words and ideas into your own work. APA focuses on the importance of giving credit to other people for their own intellectual property. And, fairly importantly, it also helps you avoid plagiarism in your own writing. There's this misconception that APA is always changing. APA is not always changing. It changes approximately once a decade when the manual is updated. APA was most recently updated in October in 2019, so some of your instructors still might be using the 6th edition, while others might be using the 7th. Sometimes instructors have preferences as well. So, for example, you might hear one instructor say, "Oh, you need to have a title page, that's part of APA." But another instructor might say, "Make sure you use APA, but you don't need to include a title page." That can be really confusing for students. So where the citation style might not change, your instructor's preferences might. I've also heard from students that to avoid plagiarism, they'll just put any resources in their references list, whether or not they actually use them within their paper. Anything that appears in your references list needs to appear at some point in your paper. It's sometimes hard to get students to care about this. Sometimes they think, what connection does it have to my career aspirations, for example? So try to reframe it like this. As a university student and in life, it's important to pay attention to details. It's important to show that you know how to follow directions. And it's really important that you give credit to other people for their ideas and words. So yes, a lot of people do actually care, besides myself, including your instructors. If you are watching this video and you just want a basic introduction to APA, you can skip ahead because I'm going to be sharing some of the most important differences between the 6th and the 7th editions. There are too many changes to talk about in this presentation, so I'm just going to highlight some of the most important ones for students. The good news for you, the changes that APA made actually make your life easier as a student. I'm going to cover some of the important changes to the language, format, how you write in-text citations, and your references page. Maybe the most exciting changes have to do with language. The American Psychological Association believes in and emphasizes bias-free language. One really important change is their endorsement of they or them as a singular pronoun. They also recommend using as descriptive, specific, and relevant language as possible, rather than broad categories. When it comes to changes for format and mechanics of style, exciting news, running heads are no longer required for student papers. They've also included a lot of different fonts that are now acceptable. And they've also made some changes to the heading levels. Change number 3. Again, something that will make your life a little bit easier as a student is the fact that you don't have to write out everybody's name. Any source with more than 3 authors, you just need to write the first author's name with "et al." I'm also really excited by the changes that emphasize traditional knowledge of Indigenous peoples. They also emphasize the necessity of having permission for using this traditional knowledge. When it comes to references, your references page will look quite similar to how it looked with the 6th edition. But you won't feel as frustrated when you're looking for how to cite electronic sources. Due to the prevalence of electronic sources, APA has really expanded its information in terms of how to appropriately reference them. Okay, so if you're new to APA, this is a great spot for you to start. I'm going to give some basic information around the format and structure, how to write in-text citations, and how to create your references page. A couple basics when it comes to format and structure. Make sure your entire paper is double-spaced, the margins are set at 1 inch, and that you use one of the following fonts. Make sure that your paper has page numbers in the top right corner and the title page is listed at 1. Okay, so what is really going to help you? Listening to me state all the specifications for the format and structure? No. What will help you is either downloading or creating an APA template that you save on your desktop. You'll create a document with the specifications of APA. Every time you start a new paper, you'll simply open up that document and resave it as your new paper. That way, you're only having to format your paper once. When it comes to your title page, it should look very similar to my example on the right-hand side. With your title of your paper, your name, the department and your university's name, the specific course, your professor or instructor's name, and the date. So an APA citation consists of 2 parts. 1, the in-text citation, which, as its name suggests, occurs in the text. And I like to explain it as a kind of flag that you're waving at your readers saying, hey, I got this information somewhere else. And then they know to go to your references page to find the rest of the information. Your in-text citation always needs to include reference to the author's last name and the date of publication. If it's a direct quote, you also need to include the page number or the paragraph. The references page occurs at the very end of your document on a separate page. And it provides all the information necessary for your reader to find your resources. A little tip for you, if you find a really great and relevant resource and you want to find more like it, use that resource's references page, which you'll be able to mine for other great resources. I want to share a few examples of the in-text citation because it sometimes looks a little bit different. For example, I want you to notice the placement of the author's name. Here we have the phrase, according to Goddard. According to is always a really great way to introduce the fact that this information is coming from somebody else. Another way to do that is by saying, the author suggests that. In the third example, you'll notice the author's name comes at the end of the sentence. Each of these examples is correct. I also want you to notice the placement of the date. In the first example, it comes directly after the author's name, but in the second example, at the end of the sentence. Same with the third example. Again, this information might move around. The important thing is that you've made it really clear to your reader that your information is coming from somebody else. The first example is a paraphrase, which means that I've taken some information and I've put it into my own words and changed the structure around as well. The third example is also a paraphrase, but the second example, you'll see that these quotation marks indicate that it's a direct quote. So you'll notice that I've included the page number with a direct quote. You do not need to include the page number with a paraphrase. However, APA suggests that you can if you want. Finally, a quick comment about the punctuation. You'll notice that it appears outside of the brackets. Let's take a look at an example of a references page. You'll notice some different looking formatting here. This is called a hanging indent, where the first line is left aligned and any following lines are indented. You'll also notice that it's double spaced. When it comes to the author's name, you'll notice that they're alphabetical and the last name comes first, followed by the first initial. APA has some really specific rules around capitalization as well. I really want to emphasize the fact that any source that appears on your references page also needs to be cited in the paper. You might be a little bit nervous about plagiarism and so think, oh, if I put it in my references page, I'm covered. However, this is unfortunately another form of academic dishonesty called fabrication, so make sure that you avoid that. Make sure it's a separate page, that items are listed in alphabetical order, it's formatted with a hanging indent, and that it's double spaced. I sometimes hear from students the sad reality that they've spent more time on their references page than they have on their entire paper. So I'm going to show you a tip that will hopefully help you save time. So here I am on the TRU library page where I find all of my fabulous resources. So I'm looking for resources on study strategies, because that's what I do. And I found a great article. I've decided to paraphrase some ideas from this resource in my paper, so of course I need to add it to my references page. You look over to the right-hand side, you'll see this handy button called Cite, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. What you'll see here is a list of various citation styles. You'll scroll through until you find the APA one. Then I can simply copy and paste this into my own references list. Just a disclaimer, occasionally the information in this is not correct, so pay close attention to the author's names or the title. Sometimes you'll see them in all caps and then need to correct that. However, this will save you a ton of time, so I hope you utilize this tip. So I'm going to spend a minute just sharing some really great resources for you because again, watching this video is not going to make you an expert on APA, and you don't actually have to be one. You simply need to know where to find the information. You're certainly never expected to memorize all of the rules of a certain citation style. The TRU library is such a fabulous resource. If I go over here to research strategies and scroll down, I'm going to look for citation styles under evaluating and citing sources and click on that. Again, some really great resources for any kind of citation style, but right now we're going to be looking for the 7th edition APA. The sample APA paper is really great if you like to see examples of things. And another useful guide on how to cite online sources. When it comes to the Writing Center, you can book an appointment with a tutor and they can either explain APA or they can go over your paper and make sure that you're on the right track. There are also some great resources that you might want to check out. Whenever I'm writing, I always have this nutshell guide next to my computer. It answers the most common questions around what formatting looks like, what your in-text citations look like, and what your references should look like. Finally, I also highly recommend the Purdue Online Writing Lab, or OWL. They also offer some really useful resources for students. So that brings me to the end of my APA 7th edition in a nutshell presentation. Feel free to check out my other videos on academic writing and study skills.